Kelly's lawyers are exposing a calculated plot being carried out by some powerful music execs to get Kelly assassinated behind bars. In fact, they say this isn't just about silencing Kelly, but about protecting industry secrets that Kelly threatened to expose. Now the question becomes, who are those execs that want him gone, and what are they trying to hide so desperately? Let's start with the attempt on Kelly's life and how he made it national headlines once again.
Lawyers for singer R. Kelly are working to get him out of prison this morning after alleging that the guards are trying to kill him.
So the emergency court filings show us that prison officials at FCI Butner, backed by music execs, tried to pull off something wild. They offered a terminally ill inmate his freedom in exchange for assassinating Kelly behind bars. The inmate who tried to take Kelly out is a dude who goes by Michael Glenn Stein. And Michael is no rookie in the system. He's been locked up since the early 80s and is affiliated with one of the most violent and feared prison gangs out there, the Aryan Brotherhood. As it turns out, Michael was approached with a deadly proposition. He was promised that he could spend the last months of his life outside prison walls if he agreed to take R. Kelly. The music execs have their ways of getting what they want, it seems. Here's where the story flips though. Instead of going through with the hit, Michael came clean to Kelly. He told him everything, the plan, the offer, and even who was behind it. With terminal cancer eating away at him, Michael said he didn't want to be part of the corrupted prison system. He wanted out, but not this way. Kelly's lawyer, Bo Brindley, says that the story goes even deeper. Bo claims this plot was a part of a larger cover-up to stop Kelly from blowing the whistle on high-level misconduct and exposing some of the dirty secrets from powerful people in the music world. In an interview that he did a few days after the news broke, Bo confirmed it once again.
And the reason is that Mr. Kelly was about to expose some facts that would be extremely inflammatory and damaging to the Bureau of Prisons.
The only way these people could have knowledge of Kelly wanting to spill the beans is if the DOJ and Bureau of Prisons were listening in on Kelly's private attorney-client conversations, and that is illegal. What's worse, Kelly's legal team says these same prison officials used inmates like Michael and others to manipulate witness testimonies and sabotage his defense. Not to mention, they've been also snitching on Kelly and talking to the higher-ups behind his back. So now, Kelly's camp is sounding the alarm. Kelly's life is in serious danger, not just because of the inmates, but because of the system that's supposed to be housing and protecting him. They're calling for home detention and even saying that Trump should give Kelly a pardon. Bo seems like he's willing to try anything in his book to get Kelly out.
Absolutely. We're going to seek every opportunity to, one, make sure that Robert Kelly doesn't get killed, and number two, to see that he is freed.
Now, what do the feds and the scared music execs have to say? As expected, they're brushing the whole thing off by calling Kelly, and the picture that his lawyers painted as fantastical and deeply unserious. In other words, they think there's not much to all these claims. This is shaping up to be way more than just another prison rumor, and we could be looking at one of the biggest scandals tied to the federal prison system in years, because just a few days later, there was another attempt at Kelly's life.
R. Kelly, real name Robert Kelly, was rushed to the hospital on Friday, allegedly having been overdosed with his own prison medication.
So Kelly ended up in the hospital just a few days ago after he OD'd on some of the anxiety meds that were given to him by prison staff. His lawyer told us that the dose was wild enough to kill him, so here's how it went down. On June 13th, Kelly woke up feeling really off. He tried to stand up but collapsed, and he ended up crawling to the cell door before blacking out. Guards found him, loaded him onto a gurney, and tried to take him to the prison hospital, but that spot couldn't handle it, so they rushed him to an outside hospital. Once they got to the hospital, the doctors did confirm that he had been given too much medication, so he stayed in there for a few days. While in the hospital, Kelly brought up another issue that he had, his swollen leg. It's something he'd been begging to get checked for months, and the doctors finally looked at it, and they found blood clots in both legs and even his lungs. He needed surgery and at least 7 more days in the hospital, plus another 2 weeks of recovery care. But here's the wild part. Once prison authorities were contacted, they pulled him out of the hospital against his will, without surgery and recovery time. That move pissed off Kelly's legal team even further, and they are now accusing prison staff of blocking care on purpose, and they say that they got the receipts too. They claim they got prison cameras that show him going into solitary confinement. Cameras also caught the extra meds being handed over, and there's hospital records which back up the overdose and untreated blood clots. Bo and his team are pushing this emergency motion hard, and they're trying to convince the judge that Kells ain't safe inside and needs to be released. Let's be clear here. This This was no accident. They believe prison officials gave him an extreme dose of meds on purpose, and that this whole situation is connected to a bigger plot to silence him. Mikey Alstint, the Aryan dude from prison, backed that up, saying that the prison staff are in on it, trying to finish Kelly off to cover up past corruption in his case. Now, we got Kelly with his life's on the line. He's scared to eat. He's sleeping with spiders and completely cut off from calls and commissary. But with the incident taking place, the lawyer can come up with something big. If his lawyer can prove those hospital records, prove the overdose, the clots, the forced removal, the denied surgery, that's documented, verifiable, and it could blow the lid off this case. And you can bet that the people plotting against Kelly are shaking right now. So who are the music execs who are trying so desperately to remove Kelly? Here's what we know. This Kelly thing has to be a part of something bigger going on, and with people outside of the prison walls getting involved. Over the years, Kelly's had a rocky history with labels, managers, and other industry figures. He's talked about it in interviews and even in his music. He knows things that could expose deep problems in the business. 2 years ago, he even sent a message from prison to all those industry players trying to mess with his records.
R. Kelly is sending a message from prison demanding people leave his music alone. In an email sent to the Sun-Times, Kelly complains about his health, loss of his career, and his family.
These kinds of statements make you think about the people in the industry who'd prefer Kelly not speak freely, and it's probably because they want to protect their own reputations and past decisions. It's no secret that the music industry has looked the other way before. Reports going back to the 90s show that some executives knew about accusations against Kelly, but continued doing business with him because he was profitable. Such was the case with the record label called Jive. Kelly Price, the producer and songwriter, told us that Jive knew very well about what R. Kelly was doing, and they did nothing about it.
The people at Jive knew what the hell was going on. And they helped it. They know, they find out what your weakness is. They find out what your poison is.
Jive Records signed Kelly in the early 90s and stayed with him through his biggest scandals, including during the time of the infamous 2002 Child P charges. According to reports from Jim DeRogatis, the dude who first broke many of the allegations, some execs at Jive were warned or directly told about disturbing behavior. Despite that, they kept funding, promoting, and releasing his albums. Jive helped release multiple albums after the infamous S tape surfaced in 2002, including Chocolate Factory, which sold millions. These people didn't care as long as the music was hot and the sales were good. But Jive did fold eventually. After Jive folded, Kelly's career passed through different Sony music subsidiaries, including RCA Records. Even after multiple public allegations, RCA continued to distribute his music until January 2019. They dropped him only after the public backlash from surviving R. Kelly sparked the Mute R. Kelly movement. But did any of these people really bear responsibility for what went down with Kelly? Not really. Legally, no executive has been charged with covering anything up, even though we got documents, testimonies, and interviews which suggest that there was at least willful ignorance or a deliberate decision to look the other way while Kelly was making money for the company. They get away with this stuff because there was no conviction. Without a conviction, labels often acted like nothing was proven. Not to mention, the victims were silenced. Many cases were settled out of court with NDAs, which helped shield Kelly and, by extension, the label. But all of this isn't unique to Kelly. In fact, it's a sinister model that exists almost as long as the music industry itself. Other artists who tried to challenge the system also faced resistance when they spoke out. First in line, Prince. Back in '92, Prince signed a fat deal with Warner Brothers, but here's the thing. They owned all his masters, even the joints he dropped since 1978. So he made the music, but he didn't control it. Now here's where it gets sticky. Prince was a machine, constantly dropping heat and trying to flood the streets with new albums. But Warner wanted an album once every 2 years. They thought too much Prince would hurt sales. So he's out here creating non-stop and they're telling him to chill, like his creativity came with an off switch. By '93, Prince had enough. He flipped the script and changed his name to that wild symbol, started rocking Slave on his face, and basically told the world, "This label owns me." It was a loud and unapologetic protest. Warner and the industry weren't trying to hear it though. They liked having control, and Prince's hustle messed with their system. The execs didn't know what to do with an artist that wouldn't sit down and play nice. After 20 years of beef, Prince finally got his masters back in 2014. That move let him decide when and how his music got released. Major W for artist freedom. But it wasn't just about him. Prince's fight made other artists wake up. It exposed the shady contracts, the royalty games, and the gatekeeping in the industry. TLC had a similar situation, and they exposed the shady dealings and how disgusting these people can get. TLC was running the game in the 90s, but behind all the chart toppers and Grammys, they were dead broke. Like, filed for bankruptcy broke, even after making the label over $170 million. They said it themselves during their Grammy Awards interview.
We have been in this business for 5 years, and we are broke as broke can be.
They got played back in '91 when they signed with LaFace and Pepitone. Their contract was trash. They were only getting about 56 cents per album, and that had to be split 3 ways. That's barely lunch money, even when you're going triple platinum. So in '95, at the peak of their success, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and they were broke while being the biggest girl group out. It wasn't just about the money, it was strategy too. Filing gave them legal leverage to call out the system and demand better terms. And they didn't play it quiet. They pulled up to Clive Davis's office, took every TLC plaque off his walls. Suddenly, folks were talking about how labels rob artists blind with these shady contracts. Eventually, they won a partial W, but it came at a price. They still had to drop more albums to finish out the deal. Just like Prince, TLC's fight was about control, but for them, it was about getting paid what they earned. Prince fought for his art. TLC fought for their check. Different angles, same industry mess. And just like Prince, the labels pushed back hard, called their bankruptcy a stunt, dragged their feet, and tried to make it hard for them to move on. Typical power play, stall the artist till they break. But other artists had to push through the same thing. And sadly, this one met his demise doing it. Such was the case with Michael Jackson, whose story is yet another reminder of how the industry always gets away with whatever they want. When we talk about beef with the industry, ain't nobody did it bigger than Michael Jackson. And we're not talking tabloid drama. We're talking big money moves, corporate sabotage, and public takedowns. Michael didn't just dance around issues. He lit the whole industry on fire. Back in 1985, MJ pulled one of the most bossed-up business plays in music history. He bought the ATV music catalog. That move put Michael in a league of his own. But in '95, he merged it with Sony, creating Sony/ATV, splitting it 50-50. Now Sony had their eyes on the prize, and that prize was Michael's half. And that's where things got ugly. Fast forward to 2001, and MJ drops Invincible, but Sony straight up left that album to rot. It was left without the promo, without the music videos, and virtually no push. Michael believed it was all part of a plan to squeeze him financially, make him bleed money, force him to sell his half of the Sony ATV catalog. They wanted control, and MJ wasn't about to give it up that easy. By 2002, MJ had it. He stepped up to the mic, not for a concert, but for a full-blown press conference, and he started calling out names. He called out Sony exec Tommy Mottola, called him a racist and a devil, said Sony was using black artists, exploiting their talent, and locking them into contracts that kept them broke while the labels got rich. Michael said what a lot of artists were scared to even whisper. After MJ popped off, it was like the industry turned its back overnight. Radio play dried up, and the media coverage basically declared war on him. They tried to paint him as crazy, out of touch, difficult to work with, and more. But let's be real, that's the same formula they use every time an artist starts asking for too much power. Even with all that fire, MJ was still locked in. Sony owned his master recordings till 2010, and contractually, he was stuck until 2004. So even if he wanted to leave or go independent, the label had him cornered. But that didn't stop him from making noise, and the message stuck. Michael's fight cracked the whole system open. He made it loud and clear that even the biggest artist in the world can get played by the industry. But he also showed future generations what it means to fight back. The point we're trying to make here is that the industry has a long track record of shutting down people who push back. So, is this a real conspiracy or just a pattern repeating itself? It's fair to say there is a documented history of the industry protecting its own, even when that means covering up wrongdoing or discarding artists who become a liability. But in Kelly's case, we also can't ignore the facts. He's been convicted based on his actions. The charges against him are serious. and the legal outcomes haven't been driven by anything he said about the industry, at least not publicly. Still, his lawyers suggest a broader plan to keep Kelly silent, and that raises a lot of questions. If Kelly truly does know damaging information, and if there are powerful figures who fear that exposure, then the idea of an outside effort to control or silence him isn't totally far-fetched. But right now, it remains just that, an idea, a possibility, not a proven fact.